You need to have water, you need to have a radio on batteries, and you need to have a flashlight on batteries to make sure that you can survive the first 36 hours. Things like that. That's simple things. But it starts there. The realization that not everything is plannable, not everything is going to be honky-dory in the next 20 years. I'm not saying it is going wrong tomorrow, but we have to realize it's not a given that we are in peace. And that's why we have the plans. That's why we are preparing for a conflict with Russia and the terror groups, if it comes to it, if they attack us. We're not seeking any conflict. But if they attack us, we have to be ready.
Okay, so Ukraine is on its last legs. This country has been on life support for months. The economy is in the gutters. They've lost over 500,000 dead, over 1 million casualties. Millions of Ukrainian civilians have left the country. The only reason why the country exists at all right now is because the United States, because the United States is printing money. The United States is borrowing money from itself in order to prop up the Ukrainian economy, giving investment money, paying salaries to Ukrainian civilians over there, paying the salaries to Ukrainian soldiers because the Ukrainian government is completely out of cash, economy gone. But the war is basically over. Obviously, they're still going to be fighting. There's going to be fighting for months. This is how these wars operate. Even when a country is strategically defeated, they'll still fight for months on a battlefield. And Ukraine is going to fight until the last dime runs out, because we all know they've been begging for money from the United States. Biden is trying to send them another $60 billion to the military industrial complex, into the coffers of political leaders in Ukraine and in the United States. That's what that $6 billion is for. But instead of just saving lives and calling for an end to this thing, instead of trying to come up with some type of negotiation, which is not going to be a favorable negotiation on NATO side now, because Ukraine and Russia had an agreement back in 2022, but NATO, United States, and UK nixed that negotiation. So now that Ukraine has suffered a strategic defeat, they're out of men, they're out of all that fancy NATO equipment. There's nothing that they can do to push Russia out of eastern Ukraine, nothing at all. Russia has annexed these territories and is about to annex more. They should just surrender and save lives. The few men that you have left, how about you let them live? How about we just get this thing over with? But no, that's not going to happen, because the war pigs in Washington, D.C., the war pigs in London, they don't want that to happen. The NATO leadership is embarrassed. This is a major proxy war, one of the biggest proxies of the United States. Ukraine is probably the biggest proxy in U.S. history, with the amount of money and hype and propaganda that they pushed into Ukraine. The biggest proxy in U.S. history in this U.S.-Russia war. The proxy has been defeated. The United States is extremely embarrassed, but they're pushing so much propaganda in the United States that many U.S. citizens don't even know. They say, oh, Russia's trash, Ukraine is winning, even though they've been strategically defeated on the battlefield. But rather than just let Ukrainians live, save lives, they care about this country so much that they're letting them lose hundreds of thousands of lives. But instead of just letting Ukraine live, they're going to fight Russia until the last Ukrainian, because they want to save face. They don't want to face the embarrassment of what happened. All your fancy trash NATO weapons, the Leopard 2 tank, the Bradley, the Challenger tank, burning. So these guys are pushing to escalate this war. Just recently, we're going to read this article here. Russia just bombed a place in Kharkiv and found what they say are dozens of French soldiers, French mercenaries, because we have all these NATO troops, thousands of NATO troops over there in Ukraine fighting Russia, and a lot of them just getting killed. But they're under the guise of, oh, we're volunteers. We're just mercenaries. Even though we are NATO soldiers, we're no longer NATO soldiers. We used to be. We're just volunteering. We're over here fighting in Eastern Europe for free because we care about the cause. Completely ridiculous. The Russian parliament on Wednesday passed a resolution addressed to French lawmakers denouncing the alleged presence of French mercenaries in Ukraine, escalating tensions with Paris. So there's some disputes. France is now trying to say Russia is pushing disinformation, they're lying, but we're going to use our common sense and think about what's more plausible. The move follows days of escalating tensions between Moscow and Paris after Russia claimed without evidence. Yeah, this is from the Kyiv Post, so you got to read between the lines here. There's going to be a lot of bias. And when these news organizations, they always say, oh, without evidence. They claim this without evidence. It shows bias. Instead of just reporting the news, you want to throw your opinion in there. You want to put your thumb on the scale to manipulate the readers. To have killed a group of French mercenaries in Ukraine's Kharkiv last week, despite the fact that Paris officially denies that French mercenaries are participating in a military conflict in Ukraine, objective information about losses in mercenary neo-Nazi units reliably indicates the opposite, the resolution read. So you got these French mercenaries over here, which is highly likely because we've had thousands of NATO troops over there. Like I said, in fact, thousands of Poles, just people from Poland, they put on Ukrainian uniforms and then they go fight Russia and pretend that they're Ukrainians. But since Ukraine is out of men, they're trying to push even more over there. And another major problem that the Ukrainian army has been dealing with is the NATO equipment. They're sending so many different types of things that don't all work the same. Different types of tanks, different types of armored fighting vehicles, different types of rifles. So the training is really different. And then these Ukrainians don't even know how to use the equipment. You send the Patriot systems over there, you send Stingers, you send HIMARS. These guys get bare minimum training. And then they're given this expensive equipment to use. So NATO figured, okay, how about we just disguise some of our guys? We'll send our guys over there who already know how to use the equipment. We'll send them under the guise of mercenaries, or we'll put them in Ukrainian uniforms. Then they can use your equipment and Ukraine can pump out more bodies faster. So they'll just get the guys very minimal, couple of weeks long or less basic training and then send them out to the battlefield. They don't have to go through a year-long training on how to use certain systems like the Patriot. They don't have to go through all of the extensive training because we'll have our guys over there using it. So that's another reason why some of these NATO guys are over there to begin with. Ukraine has these neo-Nazis group, the Azov Battalion, and others because there are a lot of Stefan Banderas, the Banderites, who worked for Hitler back in the day. That's a different story, but that's how they originated. You have all these neo-Nazi units in Ukraine, and they've been funded by NATO. They've been funded by the United States. And you have, allegedly, according to Russia, French mercenaries over there working with them. We should ask ourselves, our voters, who we are dealing with when we talk about France and the French. It read, Moscow said it had destroyed a group of 60 French mercenaries in a strike on Kharkiv on January 17th. Paris has dismissed the claims as part of a Russian disinformation campaign, saying it had no mercenaries in Ukraine or anywhere else. And remember, it's illegal in France. If you're from France, it's illegal to be a mercenary, to be a soldier for hire, basically. So France is trying to say, well, no, Russia's just trying to cause problems. They're just trying to make us look bad because they're trying to say we're violating our own laws by allowing these mercenaries to go to Ukraine. So obviously, France is going to deny this because you're sending troops over there to back up these Ukrainians who are getting annihilated on the battlefield. You're sending troops over there, but you want to have plausible deniability. So, of course, France is going to say, oh, no, this is a lie. Oh, that body over there, that French guy, oh, these guys who surrender, who are speaking French and saying they're for France, no, that's not true. That's disinformation. And Russia says they have even more evidence that these are definitely, absolutely French guys who are over here fighting Russian troops in Ukraine. And like I said, it's more believable that it's true because Ukraine has lost over 500 men. They're even admitting it themselves, but the Western media keeps suppressing it, especially the U.S. sources. They keep suppressing it because the administration doesn't want this information getting out. So NATO is sneaking their own guys over there, and they're just lying about it. They're saying, oh, just retire. You can put in your papers and retire and go over there as a mercenary, and maybe we'll send some money to Ukraine, and then Ukraine can give you a little check, and we can say, oh, yeah, that's just a volunteer. That's a mercenary. That'll give us plausible deniability. Or like I said, you can do what Poland does and just put on Ukrainian uniforms and lie about who you are. Pretend that you are Ukrainian. Send 2,000 Poles over there, put on Ukrainian uniforms, and pretend that you're Ukrainian. And it's all about plausible deniability. And that's because These guys don't want to end the war. These guys push so much propaganda about how easy it was to defeat Russia, how this is a battle between good and evil. That's what Poland said. This is a battle between good and evil. Even these trash warmongering politicians who were debating in the Republican primary, these people were talking about this is a battle of good versus evil. So when you talk about Russia is completely evil, Putin is Hitler, this is so terrible, we need to come in as savior, save the day, because the Ukrainian people are precious. Ukraine is the greatest place in the universe. When you talk like that and then you go over there and get your butt kicked when 500,000 Ukrainian men died and all your overpriced NATO equipment fails, you can't face reality. You don't want to come to terms with reality and admit what happened. So you would rather escalate the war. In fact, let's look at British leadership over here telling the British people they need to get ready to be conscripted because we might have to fight Russia.
Somebody who you'll know well, General Sir Patrick Saunders. I'm not sure if you served with him, but certainly you have served. You did. So he's suggesting, reading between the lines in the Telegraph today, that if we go to war with Russia, we could find that our youth may have to be conscripted. That's a bit alarming.
Yes, head of the British Army, one of the most cerebral thinkers that we've got, a strategist. We need to listen and listen carefully. We've been too complacent. I think I've said this many times with you. What's coming over the horizon should shock us. It should worry us, and we are not prepared. We've had a couple of decades, 3 decades or so since the Cold War. Life has gone well. It's now going to get more difficult as authoritarian states exploit our timidity, our perhaps reluctance to really put fires out. And the best example of that is a democracy on the corner of Eastern Europe that in its 3rd year is now in conflict, and we've not resolved that. So Patrick Saunders is saying, prepare for what's coming over the horizon.
So I wonder what's going to happen if they institute a British draft, because the British army is weak as hell. They're down to about 70,000 men, and the army is shrinking. In a couple of years, they're going to be somewhere around 55,000 men. And obviously, you can see their Navy is half the size of what it should be. Their equipment has severely underperformed on the battlefield. That stuff they sent over there. And obviously, they got financial issues, so they don't have the money to send stuff over to Ukraine. And most of these people over here in the UK talk all this trash about Russia, but they don't want to fight. They want the Ukrainians to go do the dying for them. So the writings on the wall, this proxy war between US and Russia has turned out to be an absolute embarrassment for the Americans. And like I said, they're gonna save face as long as possible, especially in this election year. And the biggest problem came when the United States government started believing its own propaganda about Russia. When the United States government pushed propaganda, oh, Russia's a regional power, Russia sucks, Russia's running out of missiles, they don't have money, the people in Russia hate Putin. When you push all this propaganda and you believe it, you believe your own propaganda and start making policy and war decisions based on propaganda that you created, you're going to lose. And that's exactly what's happened. So we have NATO troops dying in Russia. They're learning the hard way. Oh, this ain't the Middle East. This isn't some third world country in the Middle East. This is way hard. And the shame of it all is these men are dying, fighting for their country. Well, fighting under the instructions of their governments, not really protecting their countries, but the government is sending them. And the government is not acknowledging what happened. The government is not acknowledging that they died fighting for them. So if it's true that these Frenchmen were sent over here and they got dropped off by the Russians, and then the French government turns around and says, oh no, those aren't even our guys, that's crazy. So let me know what you guys think about this. Leave me your thoughts below, share the video. Thanks for watching.